Marshall Peak, Chapter 6016, Preparations Complete. Marshall Peak, author. Sylvan Moon's serene glimmer and sun's burning light looked at each other, confused. This has certainly never happened before. With the marks on them, Moon's serene glimmer and sun's burning light realized the intricacies of their powers. Though all of their heritage could be said to have originated from the primordial light, these two were slightly different. They definitely had the identity of being divine spirits, and their connection to the primordial light, along with connection to Moon's serene glimmer and sun's burning light, were unquestionable. However, their existence was at the same time out of the sphere of influence of the primordial light. In other words, the twins could obtain the sun and moon marks due to their connection. However, sun and moon marks would have no real influence on them. Their existence has in essence exceeded the marks, and their cultivation would not grow or improve from the marks. There was no bloodline to purity, nor divine spirit source to strengthen. In fact, the sun and moon marks were to the twins no different from just tools. It might really be the case where the black ink strength could not affect them, since even power close to the primordial light did not affect them. Naturally, for Moon's serene glimmer and sun's burning light, their minds had never developed to go so deep. It was just like Little 11 had said. They tested the twins, and they had instinctively felt the two to be incorruptible. After all, they could not influence these two. How could black ink strength possibly do so? They refused to accept it. Moon's serene glimmer and sun's burning light looked at each other and gave a nod. They acted like the great seniors they were. Yes, very powerful. About to reach our level. Yes, about to reach our level. Little 11 had to open his lips to help Zhang Ruoshi confirm. After all, if these two started acting, it would take an eternity to get things done. So, they won't be influenced by black ink strength, right? Yeah, won't. The two answered simultaneously. Little 11 turned to Zhang Ruoshi and added, "There you have it. All three of us have basically reached the same conclusion. I understand that you are worried for them, but I can assure you that they will be absolutely safe. I can even swear to heaven." Zhang Ruoshi sighed and relented. She believed that if there was really something to worry about, Yang Kai would have done something beforehand. These were his two children after all. He must have a certain level of confidence in this plan to allow the situation to evolve to this. All right, I understand. So, we just have to prepare as usual, right? Zhang Ruoshi said as she used her hand to signal to Moon's serene glimmer and sun's burning light to get ready. The two split away and appeared behind Zhang Ruoshi before they left. Since this was not the first time they've tried to do this, they were pretty familiar with the procedure. Previously, besides Yang Kai, others like Fong Tianci and Thunder Shadow had tried to go in with Little 11. Naturally, they had a world tree clone inside of their small universe to protect themselves before they attempted this. Zhang Ruoshi had led the way, and Little 11 had led the twins to follow along. While walking, Little 11 explained to them, "Later, inside of the profound source gate, you will need to stick close to me. Never wander too far away. It'll be pitch black inside, and the other me might attack us." "Other you?" Yangji asked. "Yes, you can think of him as my evil twin brother. You can sort of say that all the bad things I did was because of him, but I would still like to claim responsibility for my failure to stop him." Little 11 said with a heavy heart, if Mu was here, she would definitely say that it was not his fault. However, it was a fact that his own inability to control his powers had led to so many years of tragedy. "Uncle, then what would you like to do with your twin brother?" This time, it was Yang Su that asked. "Well, we were originally one. I wish to be able to get back to that state." Little 11 replied, "So, you're getting remarried to your brothers?" Yang Su asked with a twinkle in her eye. Little 11 scratched his head and tried his best to come up with an easy-to-understand response. No. Merging would be the more accurate term. In the past, I could not control my powers, and it ran amok. it has essentially become another person. So, I'm just trying to take back control over my powers. When inside, you will see me trying to absorb it. It will resist, maybe attack, maybe try to flood into me to erase my consciousness. I would need you to protect me. Can you do that for me?" And the twins responded in unison. Little 11 further elaborated on what they needed to do while inside. And the twins listened so attentively that their tutors would be envious. The lecture took quite a while until they reached an open area with clear rays on the ground. In the middle was a dent with markings around it and spreading out from it. Mountains, rivers, trees, stones, structures all seemed to be in harmony as a complex network of nested arrays were abound. Although it was not something viewable from the ground, the whole universe world had in fact been made into an array. The purpose was twofold: to prevent this universe world from breaking apart while moon's serene glimmer and sun's burning light played, and to prevent any hazards from escaping if something were to go wrong. In fact, the reason why this whole venture had been done in the chaotic dead territory was to limit the risk of another outbreak of black ink strength. After all, moon's serene glimmer and sun's burning light were here. Even if they could not ultimately stop black ink strength from spreading, they would be able to buy enough time for Yang Kai to come and secure the area. Marshall Peak, Chapter 6017. Descend into the orb, Marshall Peak, author. Sullivan Little 11 looked around in remembrance, while the twins stared at the patterns on the ground and structures. If they were to describe their feelings towards this array, it would be overbearing. Even their own home and the restricted zone did not have such dense array patterns. The weight of everything seemed to really hit them at this moment, as they felt the invisible pressure of the expectation from what they were about to do. After all, words to describe were incomparable from first-hand experience in going up on stage. The amount of effort it took to build this stage was incalculable. 4 arrays, every detail had to be taken note of, and these were nested arrays. Though the twins did not know the whole universe world had been made into an array, just from seeing the distant mountains and rivers having such intricate patterns, they now knew how critical this was. Unconsciously, their hands slowly moved to hold each other. Little 11 took out the orb, as though displaying it. He pointed to the dent in the middle and started to explain. "Before I place it there, do note that your safety is of utmost importance. If something awful happens, past the point of what you feel is safe, retreat." It was at this time Zhang Ruo she moved towards them with 2 space rings, as though continuing from where Little 11 left off. "These are 2 space rings that are vital. Do put them on, and make sure you do not lose them under any circumstances. Inside are Yin and Yang crystals, blue crystals for Yin and yellow crystals for Yang. There is also a token in each ring. Break it to immediately leave the place." Yang Ji and Yang Su accepted the ring with both hands. They used their divine sense to check through the contents and were astonished to find mountains upon mountains of blue and yellow crystals. There were other items like pills and artifacts as well, but the second most eye-catching thing inside the ring was definitely the token with a return written on it. Compared to the rest, this token had an overt aura of someone familiar. Someone who the twins often joked as Grandmaster Trouble, Ma Fan. The twins looked at each other, and without a word, they swapped rings. They each compared what they got and nodded before putting the ring on. Once they wore it, the band of the rings seemed to tighten as to perfectly fit their fingers. Yang Ji looked at Little 11 and asked, "Uncle 11, why don't you also get a space ring?" Little 11 chuckled and explained how he had gone on this trip so many times that he had already prepared what he needed, that they should not worry about him. Zhang Ruo, she just shook her head and proceeded to instruct, "Before you go in, let me brief you on another artifact you need to take note of." Zhang Ruo, she took out something that seemed to look like a lantern. However, the artifact was not fueled with charcoal. Rather, it required the use of blue and yellow crystals. From what the twins could see, the area it lit up was considerable enough, around 100-meter radius. The rate of consumption was also not too fast, with them needing to replace the crystals inside every 4 hours or so. Zhang Ruo, she continued to explain about each artifact in detail within the ring, about the other use of the crystals, as though this was the only way she could soothe her worries. Nevertheless, the time had come, and nothing else needed to be said. That's about everything. You understand everything, right? Zhang Ruo, she asked, to which the twins replied with a firm nod. Naturally, Zhang Ruo, she knew that with their cultivation, everything that was said were all remembered. She just could not help herself from asking. Little 11 stepped in and signaled for the twins to come closer. He was already standing on the circular platform with a dent in it. Okay, I think we've already gone through everything. Yang Ji, Yang Su, come here and stand within this circle. Knowing there was nothing else she could do, Zhang Ruo, she sighed and took a few steps back. Meanwhile, the twins followed their uncle's instructions and stepped into the same circular platform as him. Once they were within it, little 11 asked in confirmation, "Ready?" And the twins held each other's hand as they gave a firm nod. Little 11 soon placed the orb in the dent, and the whole universe world seemed to tremble. The patterns all around them started glowing, and the structure beneath their feet began to drop down. The whole circular area had begun to sink into the ground. When Yang Ji and Yang Su looked at their surroundings in astonishment, they saw the whole mountains and rivers start to glow, with countless mysterious patterns being lit up. Finally, their eyes laid on the three not in the circle who waved their hands for a farewell. They could see Zhang Ruo, she being reluctant. As for Moon's serene glimmer and Sun's burning light, who had been playful this whole time, they wore solemn expressions. That was the last scene they saw of the outside world as the circular platform beneath their feet quickened in its descent. Over the course of the next few seconds, the hole above their heads, leading to the sky, got as small as an apple. Eventually, even the sky could not be seen anymore, as the exit got covered, with the only light source being the glowing patterns of the array of the walls and floor. They could even hear the sounds of what seemed to be multiple gates above them being closed, with this sound being continuously played and getting closer. At some point, little 11 spoke up, maybe due to his own emotions, or maybe due to seeing how the kids were so tense that they did not speak. "I have to thank you too for this. Honestly, I doubt any other person could accompany me on this journey. For the two of you, you need not worry too much. I'll handle everything." Even though little 11 said such words, the twins were not fools. If he could truly handle everything, then what were they here for? They obviously had a special role in the grand scheme of things. They were just worried they would mess up. Yang Su, the more tactful one, was the first one to answer with a nod. And Yang Ji also gave a nod as a follow-up. Not too long, the walls and everything seemed to start to get brighter, and in a flash, the whole space they were in had changed. Sullivan, I feel like I've dragged the prep work for too long. I can't help but feel like they need this much prep work done, though. Well, in the next chapter, we'll be inside the profound source gate. Marshall Peak. Marshall Peak, Chapter 6018. Try touching Marshall Peak author. Sullivan, the next moment Yang Ji and Yang Su opened their eyes. They were already in an empty space with a gate in front of them. The empty space was completely white. It was not painted white, but rather glowing white. Even without explanation, Yang Ji and Yang Su could feel the warm and mighty energy emitted from their feet. Meanwhile, the white sky was merely a reflection of the ground. In fact, they believed the reason why the orb looked so dark from the outside was because all kinds of energy could not escape from the orb and was trapped inside by this reflective sky. As for the gate, it was larger than any other gate they had seen before and tightly sealed. It was carved with intricate patterns, and every one of them seemed to be the essence of numerous grand Daos. Although Yang Ji and Yang Su did not know much about the Tao of artifact refining, they could nevertheless tell that this gate was not something humans created. It perfectly resonated with heaven and earth, as though it had been birthed along with the universe. Little 11 proceeded to approach the gate, and the twins followed. Before anything else, Little 11 instructed them to touch the gate first. When they did, memories of the past flooded their minds, terrible memories. For Yang Ji, he remembered the time when he got scolded by his mother for catching him not studying seriously. The spanking that followed was not one he wished to remember. He could already feel his but turn red. For Yang Su, she remembered the time when she caught her brother saying he wanted to be like their father and have his own harem. She beat him up afterwards, and their relationship was on thin ice for a while. Memories continued to replay, and the twins all made sad expressions. Little 11, who was checking up on the changes, simply waited. Over time, the two children broke free on their own without needing his help. He gave a nod, as though this had been expected. Making contact with black ink strength would normally lead to humans being corrupted. Divine spirits are naturally more resistant to it. Just the surface of the profound source gate is hard to make contact with for most humans. Little 11 touched the gate and swept his fingers over it. There seemed to be small dark dust particles on his fingers, which he licked. These particles were the escaped black ink strength from when he opened the gate previously. In general, black ink strength would be eliminated by the surrounding white space within the orb, as yin and yang energies were constantly being exuded. However, since this was from Mo's source, it took a lot more time to purify. What was left on the door was black ink strength trying to retreat back into the profound source gate, but could not do so. It had been so long that only dust-like particles were left of them. Did either of you feel anything change in your knowledge, see? Both shook their heads, with Yang Ji explaining first. Uncle 11, all we experienced was recalling some bad memories. I don't think I feel anything different with my knowledge. See, I'm the same with Big Brother, Yang Su continued, and asked, are we supposed to feel something? I guess it is different from person to person. Your father, when he was weaker, and a few others, reported that they would feel as if their knowledge, sea, and small universe were slowly being dyed black and get out of their control. Dark memories of the past would flash by, and they relieved it while slowly losing themselves. For you too, I did expect it to have some effect, but the extent was questionable. If you two couldn't handle it, we might as well call this whole thing off. Little 11 said, a little impressed that these two were completely fine after all that. What did you two experience? Just a nightmare, Yang Ji stated, not wanting to delve much deeper into the topic. And I did not see much. Yang Su answered straightforwardly, with eyes that did not know the word deceit. Little 11 gave a knowing nod of approval and said, well, if it affected you so little, then we might as well just enter directly. Upon those words, he placed his hand on the gate and started to push. The world seemed to tremble as the seemingly immovable gate doors started to vibrate. The dust on the gate also seemed to come alive, and they drifted more fervently towards the center. When a slit had just opened up, what seemed to be a large black blade immediately shot out. The twins could barely react, with their eyes only seeing a blurry shadow quickly approaching Little 11. As for Little 11, he had already predicted this would happen. He swiftly removed his hands from the gate and retreated to the side. The blade passed by him, narrowly snipping off a part of his fringe. As though the blade had eyes, it knew that it had missed its target. Instead of retreating back to the slit, it became more aggressive and branched out into 3 sharp abyssal black, spear-like weapons. These 3 black spears immediately pointed themselves towards whoever was present. In this case, the twins were now also in its crosshair. Little 11's eyes narrowed, and he swiftly took out a token. He was reluctant to use it now, but he seemed to have no choice. It was clear the children would not be able to dodge this attack on their own. Injecting his chi into the token, the whole world trembled. The sky now had array patterns all over it, with the intensity of the light from the ground becoming exponentially more blinding. "Close your eyes," Little 11 roared as the spears raced across the space between them. Yang Ji and Yang Su immediately reacted by closing their own eyes. Though frightened, they trusted their uncle's words. The spears that approached them initially seemed to sizzle due to the surrounding light. But soon, a bright flash engulfed the world, turning everything into white. No matter how dark an object was, the light was so strong that all manner of darkness was eradicated for that brief moment. The spears lost their structural integrity, and they started to crack. Those web-like cracks spread and reached the trunk of those branched-out spears, even affecting past whatever it was behind the gate. Soon, those parts furthest from the door started to break down into dust as they scattered. However, with the strong light still in the surroundings, they broke down further as if nothing was left. Yang Ji and Yang Su, who managed to protect their eyes from that flash, could clearly hear someone screaming. However, it was not from any of them. The scream was from behind the gate. The scream was of great anguish, filled with rage and reluctance. The next moment, they could hear something slamming against the gate, but the gate did not seem to be able to close. The thing behind the gate obviously wanted to prevent any more light from outside to enter. However, the slit in the gate still persisted despite all the effort it gave. Marshall Peak, Chapter 6019, The Surprise Behind the Profound Source Gate. Marshall Peak author. Sullivan, despite the screaming backdrop, Yang Ji and Yang Su felt a comfortable sensation all over their body. It felt as though the air around them was caressing them in a warm embrace. Soon enough, this warm sensation faded, and the screams behind the door also slowly mellowed out. When silence returned, without any instructions, they both slowly opened one eye to check on the situation. Seeing how everything had calmed down, Yang Su sighed in relief while Yang Ji went to check on his sister. "Don't let your guard down. The enemy is still there," Little 11 warned, though he knew Emma well enough that it was fine to take a breather at this point. After all, that child would never want to do something that could potentially harm it. Nevertheless, better safe than sorry. This was the first time Little 11 had to use the primordial flash to defend against Mo. All previous attempts were always with experts who knew of Mo's strength firsthand. They were on guard before they even tried to open the gate, so it was unnecessary to go as far as to use the primordial flash. Little 11 naturally would prefer not to use the primordial flash if possible, since it did take up mountain piles of ninth-order Yin and Yang element materials. Even with Moon's serene glimmer and Sun's burning light, such an amount would take time to accumulate. Currently, it could at most be fired 2 more times. Still, Little 11 was a little surprised by this sudden attack. This was the first Mo had been so aggressive. Normally, once the gate opens up, Mo would not attack. Rather, Mo tended to be more cautious when dealing with any newcomers. The last time Yang Kai was here with Little 11, Mo literally hid some corner of the space behind the profound source gate. Even for Yang Kai, the space behind this gate was too large to explore, with only darkness in sight and his limited divine sense. Even if he wanted to find Mo, how could he be certain that Mo would not just hide in another location once it sensed him approaching? For Mo, it was like a fish swimming in water, while for others, it was like walking in a quagmire. For Yang Kai, he did not feel like he could spend so much time on a wild goose chase. Not after he had already spent more than a decade searching without any fruitful result. Even the profound source gate was only a gate to this unknown space. It did not contain this space itself. Even after refining it and studying it, all Yang Kai could do was open and close the gate. In fact, for all its grandeur and mystery, Yongkai truly believes that was the sole purpose of the profound source gate, to keep whatever was in this other world from getting out to their world. All Yongkai managed to do after so long was to ensure that nothing would leak out of the gate under his control and open it for Little Eleven's goals. That being said, when it was others that ventured deeper into the profound source gate with Little 11, MO would be open to attacking them. After all, it knew who it could pick a fight against and who it needed to avoid. Nevertheless, with their preparations, these attacks could be shrugged off. Unfortunately, the environment inside was not exactly friendly to the others. Regardless of the preparation, prolonged exposure to this space seems to corrupt them in one form or another. Without exception, all would have to leave the space before a year had passed. This was regardless of them being divine spirits or humans. The three of them waited for a moment for things to settle. Yang Ji and Yang Su followed Little Eleven's words and stayed alert. Fortunately, nothing else really happened after a few breaths had passed. Seems like we are in the clear now. Mo should be avoiding being close to the gate at this point in time, which is the perfect opportunity to fully open the gate. Little 11 said, as he once more stepped closer to the profound source gate. This time, to prevent any incidents, he directly stood in front of the gap and pushed the gate open. Rumble once again. The world-trembling tremor spread. As Little 11 had said, nothing truly happened as he was pushing the gate open. Even when the gap was now too large for him to push any further, nothing else occurred. It was truly anticlimactic. However, Little 11's next words sparked curiosity within all its listeners. What is going on? Hearing those words, the twins could not help but look over his arms. Behind the gate, illuminated by the light, they saw a unique scene that they had not expected. In fact, even Yongkai would not have predicted this scene to be in front of them. The furthest depths of the gate was completely dark. As long as no light touched that location, it was completely dark by the abyss. This stood true to Little 11's explanation of the place to the twins. However, what laid closer were the things that interested them. They were plants, actual plants. However, these were not the typical plants that they could find elsewhere. The plants were pretty much all of the same color of blackish blue or blackish purple. It was only with the light that their outline and slightly different coloration could be spotted. Otherwise, everything would be uniform black. Uncle 11, didn't you say that the whole space behind the gate is just an empty space void of anything? Yangji could not help but ask. Despite this being a pressing and reasonable question, Little 11 would also like to know what the hell was going on. This was not here the last time. Something must have changed. Little 11 now hesitated. This was not something he thought was possible. Marshall Peak, Chapter 6020, Strange Flower, Marshall Peak author, Sullivan. This is impossible. How did something like this possibly appear? Little 11 started to question everything, recalling all the past expeditions inside. However, nothing came up. These had truly just appeared out of thin air. Without being able to contain himself, Little 11 rushed into the profound source gate and directly went to pick one of the flowers. The moment he touched one, a familiar feeling washed over him. There was no need for someone else to explain it to him. He already knew what these were. So, that's what it is, Little 11 murmured, which did not go unnoticed by the twins. Still in front of the gate, Yang Ji questioned, Uncle 11, did you figure something out? Little 11 gave a slow nod and explained, this is all made using black ink strength, but it is at the same time also not black ink strength. Yang Su shook her head at this contrary answer. She asked for more clarity. So, what is it? Little 11 picked out a flower and moved back to the twin. The moment he crossed the gate, he could see the flower gradually losing its original form. It was apparent that the closer he got to the light outside, the more the flower seemed to wither. This is made using black ink strength to create another life. Little 11 turned around and pointed at the ground behind the gate. In essence, this is no different from black ink strength, but it exists separately from MO, as though it is another entity. This is not much different from the black ink clansmen in your history lessons. As you can see, because of the primordial flash, the part directly in front of the gate does not have any of these plants. It is only at the periphery, with the gate being opened up, that we can see these plants. Yongji and Yong-su cutely bent their heads forward a little to get a better look at the flowers. They were certainly dark and strange looking, but at the same time, quite cool as well. Their shape was no different from the ones that could be found outside. They were not all homogeneous, with some variations between them. At the same time, their placement was random, as though it was an actual flower field. Yongji could not hold back his curiosity and asked, "Uncle 11, can I hold that for a moment?" Little 11 hesitated for a moment, but relented. After all, they were still safe here. "Okay, just be careful. If anything goes wrong, make sure to shout out for help." Little 11 passed the withering flower to Yongji and cautiously watched. The boy took it with both hands, trying to get a feel of its texture. Even when it touched his skin, he did not have the same back memories flood back into him again. He saw that his sister was also curious, so he handed it over to her. When she felt it all over, she could not help but comment, "It really feels like a flower." The stem is tougher, the petals are softer and smoother. Just that it's a bit colder. Yeah, but I guess it's colder because there is no sun inside. Yongji replied with a tilt of his head. Meanwhile, Lil 11 questioned, "Huh? The black ink strength is not affecting them at all? What is going on?" Although Little 11 expected things to be fine, he was still shocked to see how the black ink strength from the flower had no effect on them. He questioned if it was due to the flower already withering, but that did not make sense, as even the remnant black ink strength outside the gate had affected them. The only way to test this out is for them to go in and touch the flowers inside. Little 11 quickly shook his head. In fact, due to these major changes behind the primordial source gate, he believed it to be wise for them to retreat first, since it was to just get a cursory check of the situation, and not really to find MO. Yong Kai was the best candidate to do it. The father should make sure it's safe for his kids, after all. Little 11 mused and was about to open his mouth when something shocking happened. The withering flower suddenly began to expand, like a final desperate move. Moving along with it were the flowers behind the gate. A torrent of black shot out from behind the gate, while the withering flower quickly tried to stretch back to the gate. Unbeknownst to Little 11, it was at the instant when the withering flower expanded that black ink strength began to affect Yong-su. The black ink strength this time was definitely more potent than the first time she had made contact with it. However, the effects on her were more muted as well. It just caused her to be disoriented this time. Nevertheless, this disorientation was enough. If she was still in perfect condition, she would have instinctively thrown the flower away from her. However, with her hand still held onto it, the expansion of black ink strength naturally got wrapped around her fingers as it sought to escape. As though having learned the lesson from the previous attack, the black torrent moved faster than before. It would not give Little 11 the chance to use the primordial flash again. Before primordial flash could activate, the black torrent made contact with the outstretched, withered flower and started to pull back. This time, with Yong-su with it, hand stuck. There was not even a scream from her as she got silently pulled closer into the gate. She did not even feel her feet being forced to be dragged against the ground. Not even the two arms that wrapped around her waist were felt. Yongji had reacted quickly to grab onto his sister. Unfortunately, his meager strength was not enough to pull her free. In fact, he had made his own situation worse as he got rapidly pulled in as well. By the time there was a bright flash, the two children were gone, with Little 11 cursing how the situation had gotten drastically worse. "Sullivan, guys, Any feedback so far? Draggy? Want more action? Want more world building? It's okay as is? Marshall Peak that you're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.